African business leaders have been wooing investors with the aim of forging a new public-private deal to speed up the continent's economic transformation. This month's Africa CEO Forum brought together more than 2,000 business leaders, investors, and policymakers in Abidjan, the Ivory Coast economic hub. Among the attendees was Ghanaian President John Mahama. He told me more about plans to encourage crude extraction to avoid the assets from getting stranded amid a global decarbonization push. But Mahama says gold remains key.
Our major exports are gold, followed by oil and gas, and then cocoa. Cocoa used to be the biggest export item for Ghana. I think it's about number 3 now because of a loss of production due to climate change, but it's building back up. And so while oil is gone down, we benefit from the gas, because I think that gas is more beneficial to Ghana than the oil, because we're using gas to produce power. And it allows us to produce power comparatively lower than if we were using light crude oil completely. Fortunately, the West African power pool is operational, and so any excess power we're able to evacuate to Burkina Faso and other countries, and so that's a good thing. But in all the unpredictability of the world, and when the world gets unpredictable, one commodity that increases in price is gold. And there's gold everywhere in Ghana, from the south to the north. In the past, when we were young, when there was a thunderstorm and you went out, you could pick little specks of gold in the gold-producing areas of Ghana.
I need to go to Ghana.
Let's bring in Bloomberg's Yinka Ibukun, who is in Accra for us, another gold part of the country. Yinka, talk about how this year's forum was different to previous editions. I know you've covered this for quite a few years now.
Yes, Jen, this year's forum was really different. First of all, this started really as a small conference in Geneva in 2012 that kind of bridged the investment communities in Africa and outside to do business together. It's grown into this huge event that brought together 2,800 plus business leaders and political leaders. As you just said, you were with Mahama on stage. There were actually at least 7 presidents present for the event, which has grown really from this Francophone affair to this Pan-African one. And it's in fact been called the African Davos. Another highlight was when Ramaphosa of South Africa, President Cyril Ramaphosa, and President Paul Kagame shared the stage, and even pleasantries within a very difficult political context, of course.
Yeah, and Yinka, you mentioned the difficult geopolitical context. We talked to a lot of people about that throughout the whole gathering. What would you say for investors, some of those key takeaways, though, who are, the investors who are interested in the continent? What were the takeaways, considering a lot of the uncertainty?
So really, they were all the ingredients for the mood to be gloomy, but actually it was quite optimistic despite all of this. I spoke to a bank CEO, who was saying that he was expecting people to be sharing concerns, and instead they were sharing ways in which they could adapt to the situation. And so in terms of takeaways, one key conversation that came up was, especially for the huge infrastructure projects that Africa needs, was resorting to blended finance, which is basically having development funders de-risk projects so that more capital inflows can come in. That's been a term that's been flowing for quite a bit, but I think, necessity is the mother of invention, and we'll probably see more in that space.
Certainly. Only 2 days, but quite a busy 2 days it was. Bloomberg's Yinka Ibukun in Accra for us. Yinka, thanks so much for that update and for joining us this month.